Greetings. Today's talk focuses on three primary areas, but we also have some additions versus what we usually do. First, we start off with Bob Lutz had shared that General Motors and a number of other companies were engaged in something called a loss leader process. And so this is kind of our loss leader 2.0, and we really kind of focus on how that loss leader plan has worked across a number of manufacturers. And with that in mind, we sort of take into account the fact that the Taycan from Porsche, as well as VW Audi's Etron is now out. And there's some new performance information from Europe that references how this is all going. The third thing we covered today is something called gross margin challenges for Tesla competitors. So it turns out that part of the process of the Tesla defeat is for a process to occur where we look at gross margins and how that's impacting both Tesla and competing firms in that process. The final two areas we cover is that the stock price was down yesterday because Consumer Reports reported a downgrade of Tesla, particularly the Model 3, for quality issues. And we also look at that. And finally, we also cover the fact that the chief counsel just quit after 60 days. And we believe that that's bigger news than what's going on with Consumer Reports, but it's also one of the items that we cover in the show today. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. I'm in a place called Arundel Mills. You guys can look it up on the map. It's one of the largest shopping centers in Maryland. And behind me, you'll notice that we have some rapid charging facilities that are available for EVs on site. As usual, wanted to thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers, and ask you to join if you find the show's information and process useful. And we also welcome comments, particularly constructive ones relative to EVs and Tesla in particular. We're a supporter, but we're also mindful of the fact that we want quality information out there and to help consumers make a difference in their lives relative to EVs. So the first part of our discussion today is that we're kind of doing a 2.0 on the fact that Bob Lutz, formerly of GM and a number of other firms, has been sort of a competitor of Tesla's, if you will, in terms of suggesting that the firm was going out of business. As Tesla has been making money, he's backed off that argument and suggested that Tesla does have possibilities. And it's kind of fun to review sort of elements of how he described that Tesla might be destroyed by large competitors like GM going forward, and then use that information to sort of better understand Tesla in terms of what's going on in the EV world driven by Tesla's expansion. So the first item that I wanted to cover in that regard is that we just, thanks to Donovan, one of our friends in Sweden, we're able to join some European Facebook pages, and there's a lot of postings there regarding different things going on relative to cars in these areas. The latest posting that I thought was amazing is that it was announced that the Etron, when the temperature is at or near freezing, gets between 60 and 90 miles worth of range. So as we all know, EVs typically have lower range when we're in colder times of the year. And usually in the case of Tesla, someplace in the 20 to 30% decline in range is about what you'll see. And it really depends. If it's extremely cold, then the car has to work a lot harder in terms of using its battery power to warm up the cells so they can operate efficiently as they deliver power to the car. In the case of the Etron, one of the issues that's popped up is that there are folks that are experiencing a decline from the original 250 miles of range down to between 60 and 90 miles of range. And so I wanted to highlight this because this really illustrates the point that not only is it about the quality of the battery, but you also have to ask questions about how well the thermal management system is developed and it's working. And it's our suggestion that part of the challenge that's going on right now is that Audi slash Porsche slash VW are trying to work it out, and sort of they're the first real large competitor that's moved in to try to come after Tesla. A sidebar note on competitors coming in and blowing Tesla away with great products is the fact that, as you all know, the first competitor to enter the marketplace with a nice vehicle has been Jaguar. And while they sold 6,000 vehicles in 2018, the news reports we're getting suggest that they've sold globally 1,000 vehicles, both Europe, everywhere. And that at least in the United States, they now started offering 0% financing. So they're trying to discount to get people to purchase that vehicle. And so clearly Tesla's done some discounting, but they're not offering 0% financing. And I think it shows that the customers recognize the value that Tesla offers in a number of ways, and therefore they're drawing most of those sales. So the bottom line of this part is just the fact that it's been argued that large firms would enter and sort of blow Tesla away, and it's part of the loss leader strategy that was discussed by Bob Lutz. But what we're experiencing right now is the fact that customers, there may be a small early adopter group that's taking on those newer vehicles, but those vehicles are not really getting much traction. The second thing I wanted to cover in terms of this loss leader discussion is something I want to call gross margin challenges. So what this means is that there's a company called LG. LG is providing all those batteries that are not Tesla. The largest provider of batteries to Tesla competitors right now is LG out of Korea. One of the issues that's coming up is that currently, because of Tesla's size at the Gigafactory, Tesla actually has better economies of scale in terms of the number of sets of batteries that are being built and sold. And so one of the things that is quite clear is that there's a problem lurking for Tesla competitors, which is how do we deal with the fact that if Tesla is selling more batteries through cars that they're selling in other means, they already have a cost advantage. And then now we introduce the whole idea of the 2170 battery versus the 18650s that are being used by LG. And so Tesla has a better thermal management system. So one of the real interesting points here is if in fact both batteries, the ones from LG and Tesla, were costing about the same, once LG marks that battery up to sell that battery to a manufacturer, let's say they mark up at least 10%, but it could be 15 or 20% on those batteries. That markup on batteries as a start of the process, with batteries being half the cost of the vehicle, could in essence wipe out the profit margin that the large competitors might have. So what this means then is that we're seeing loss leaders where the large companies are having to sell at a loss to enter the marketplace. But the whole idea Lutz has talked about is how Tesla gets wiped out over time. And if in fact you have this gross margin challenge where the batteries have to be marked up and then sold to the VWs or GMs of the world, etc., as Tesla gets larger across the globe and sells more vehicles, it becomes a lot more difficult for the GMs and the VWs, etc., to actually make money on their EVs, because in theory, if they have to bake in a 10 to 15% margin for LG to make their money, and then you have an additional 5, 10, 15% that they have to add on to get above break even for their costs, this puts them in a non-competitive position price-wise against Tesla vehicles, and in particular the Model 3 in this case. So stay tuned. It's our belief that the Tesla wipeout based on the loss leader strategies being used by competing firms kind of does not add up. The next thing we kind of covered today is the fact that Tesla's stock price was down, and the suggestion was that Consumer Reports had highlighted that Tesla's having a lot of issues when it comes to repairs relative to the Model 3, and and therefore they downgraded the company, and it affected the stock price. Tesla and consumer reports have gone back and forth over time with recommendations and non-recommendations. I'd have to agree with their general sense of things, because Tesla was on a tear to try to get cars produced and sold in order to build the cash necessary to meet their loan obligations. But I think that as the whole system stabilizes, we'll see better quality cars coming from Tesla, and we'll see a future that actually looks and makes sense in terms of good quality cars being produced that aren't going to cost them an arm and a leg to repair after they've gotten out there. And so I think it's a problem right now. People tend to run for the hills in case there's some huge bad news, but I think they'll get over this. Another bit of news that sort of came out yesterday that I think is material and impacts the company greatly in terms of the discussion is the fact that the brand new chief counsel of Tesla just quit. Now, as you all know, prior to this, Tesla, Elon Musk had hired his divorce attorney in order to be his chief counsel, and as he went into some problems with the SEC after the issues they had last August, he ended up hiring away the head of the law firm that had represented Tesla in its SEC actions. And this attorney was obviously vetted and then brought in at high dollars and only lasted 60 days. I called the former chief counsel of a large company to ask it why was it that this transition had occurred so quickly, and she explained that what happens is that if in fact the person coming into the company finds wrongdoing that it doesn't fit well with what their professional training describes, they have two choices. Number one is to try to clean up the issue that they're finding or issues. The second choice is to leave, and if they leave, it's a better move because it eliminates the possibility that they might be held liable for the stuff that they're finding. So I think this is an interesting situation given the fact that over the past 6 months we've had the former chief accounting officer stay for 60 days, the CFO just quit, and now we have the chief counsel quitting. So I'm hopeful that there isn't a catastrophic issue that these folks are finding, but I wanted to note that we try to be thorough in our analysis of what's going on with Tesla, and it includes sort of reviewing what's going on with this. The next thing I'd like to review today is I had an interview this morning with a longtime Tesla owner of a 90D Model S, and he shared something that I hadn't thought about that I thought might be worth think through for folks, and that is that the highest performance numbers are being had with the widest tires. So he has 21-inch rims on his Model S, and he's now struggling because he had them painted, they look great, but the potholes in his home area of Laurel, Maryland caused him to blow out both the tire as well as bend his rims. And so one of the issues that you might consider as you're making the choice between rims width is, should you sacrifice some of the performance potential of the vehicle to get a rim that won't be damaged as easily, because that extra wide rim means you have a thinner tire, and as you hit rough roads you have the potential for damage or destruction of those rims, which creates all kinds of headaches. So perhaps a 19 or 20, even if you have the potential of a 21 or 22, might be a better way to go, to have more rubber available to address this potentially occurring. The last thing that we wanted to cover today is the fact that it's been announced that Nikola World is coming up in April, and Nikola has announced that they're going to be producing an electric semi. The photos that we're seeing, they're calling it the tray. The head of Nikola announced that they're going to have a short-range, all-electric vehicle to address customer needs in that space, and then continue to develop their hydrogen/electric-powered solution for the longer-range trucks. As you all know, We've all been watching Nikola for quite a while, and in general have not been impressed with the working prototypes that they have available for people to test out. But I have to give them credit for having an excellent marketing team that understands what customer demands might be and their ability to keep hunting customers with product ideas that from a marketing standpoint make sense, but they may not actually be delivering any products that customers can drive. But it is impressive to see the fact that they're aware of what customers want and are going to try to deliver. They do have their 800 orders for the hydrogen-based truck at Anheuser-Busch to sort of fall back on, and we'll see at Nikola World if something shows up. Thought you guys might want to keep an eye on this situation because they're potentially a large player. There are two other things we're going to roll through today. The first is that we're going to formally end our Tesla comments for the day and jump into some of the health tips that we usually cover. And then after that, I was going to include a brief introduction to my broker. I work in the real estate industry, and for those of you who want to stick around for that portion, we'd love to have you at least hear a few words from the broker in my office that sort of highlights our local in terms of Eastern Seaboard, but our affiliation with Warren Buffett that gives us a global reach when it comes to buying or selling real estate. In the health space, we've already talked about the fact that you want to do 20 leg lifts a day. I've actually started wearing my 4-pound weights for each ankle, for about a half hour a day as a way to strengthen the leg muscles, as we've talked about that numerous times. The second thing we talked about is making sure that you don't go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4 hours, so the food can digest, because what's actually happening there is even if you get acid indigestion and then you use an over-counter remedy, while the remedy may be attractive because you feel better, it's masking the damage that's being done, and you potentially are introducing upper respiratory cancer into life when you don't have to, by just managing the process better. The final thing that I wanted to sort of dive in between this and next show is a conversation I had with a kidney doctor about kind of what's going on with our food. The number one thing that he pointed out is you are what you eat. What he suggested is one of the challenges that we're experiencing in terms of diabetes, etc., is that there's a lot of new products that have been developed over the last 50 to 100 years that have entered the food supply, fried foods being a great example. He recommends not having fried food any more than once a week, preferably once every couple of weeks, because the body has a challenge with how to digest this food. So what happens is that for high fructose corn syrup or fried foods, etc., your body will actually store the stuff it can't digest around your organs. So this is why there are people that don't look necessarily overweight that can actually have type 2 diabetes, because their bodies are storing things that potentially have an impact on the body that's quite negative. Another area of research I wanted to encourage you guys to take a look at is something called free radicals. So these food products that are brand new that your body's trying to figure out what to do with can also introduce challenges in the form of something called free radicals. So I think that might be worth some research as well. So what we're going to, so I want to thank all of you, particularly those of you who've mentioned sort of health suggestions and ideas to think about. The leg weights are only $5, and I highly recommend you consider that. So I wanted to say tschüss, mach's gut, au revoir, lehitro, choda hafez, and thank you for joining us. We're going to roll into our broker comments and then end our show for today. Have a great day, and thanks for joining us.